Hey, so we're kicking off our new collection of talks this month that we're calling Who Are You? Now, I've got a question that I want to kick off the night with. How many of you guys had ever had plans that you thought were going to go one way and then they went another way? And it doesn't even have to be a bad way, right? Like, I think sometimes when we talk about plans that are supposed to go some way and then something happens and they go another way, it's always normally a bad thing, okay? But we've all had plans that we wanted to go this way and then they ended up going this way. Well, my wife and I are notorious for making plans that never work out. We have the right intentions, we have the right ideas, and it just never works out the way that we want it to. So my birthday was a couple of weeks ago, and we were going to spend the Saturday before my birthday going out, and we were going to go try this new place out in Kansas, all right? So we dropped the boys off at my parents' house. Just a day alone with me and Alyssa. Sounded fantastic. And it was. However, we started talking about this place in Kansas that we were going to go. It was this burger spot. I saw it on Instagram. I was like, oh, this place looks great. Let's go and try this. I love me a good burger, especially a good smash burger. Okay, and you guys like your patties that are like thick?
I like
thick patties. Okay. Okay, I am a smash burger connoisseur, however you say that. Your hands are greasy. We're not doing that. And so anyway, we were going to go out here, and then we realized that this place was an hour away. And as much as I love smash burgers, they're just not worth driving an hour away for. So then we start this journey of trying to figure out where we're going to eat and what we're going to do. And we drove to about 3 different spots before we finally ended up at the place that we were eating. We get to the first spot, coffee shop. They sold really good food there. We pull up to the building and it is just packed out. And if you know my wife and I, we are not waiting around for any amount of time for food. We're just going to move on to the next spot. And so we leave there. We go to the next spot. Again, packed out. Ain't doing it. We look up this last place. And man, the food looks incredible. It looks awesome. And we get there, and it ended up working out exactly how we wanted it to. There was nobody waiting for a table. We got right in. We sat down. We sat down at a table, but how many of y'all know when you go out to eat, you want a booth? You don't want the table that's in the middle of the restaurant. You want a booth. Feels a little bit, off to the side. You don't feel in the way. Even though people can still hear your conversation, it doesn't feel like they can hear your conversation. Like if you were in the middle of the restaurant, they came up to and said, hey, we have a situation that we actually need this table for. Would you guys moving to a booth? We said, absolutely no problem. So we get up, we move to the booth. I order some delicious biscuits and gravy. How many of y'all love biscuits and gravy? I can't trust some of you guys now. No, it was for brunch time. Okay. But also biscuits and gravy for dinner is perfectly fine.
Not my first breakfast.
Okay. Eat it up. It's so good. We then go and we walk around the plaza for a little bit, have some more fun, and we get to some dessert, and then we go and get the boys. It was a great birthday day, but it wasn't the plan that we originally had. And I think sometimes, a lot of times in life, we can get frustrated when plans don't go the way that they are supposed to. But here's what I know, and here's what I've found over my life as I'm getting old, is that oftentimes it's when plans don't go the way that they're supposed to, that when it comes to my life and the direction that I'm going to, it's actually those moments that Jesus shows up the most, and he'll shift things around and he'll move things around and he'll allow me to head in the direction that I'm supposed to go. This past Sunday, Pastor Jason kind of alluded to this in his message. If you weren't there on Sunday morning, go back on our regular church's YouTube channel and check out the message. Pastor Jason did an incredible job this past week. But he talked about how oftentimes there are moments in life that Jesus will thrust himself into your situation and he'll shake up everything that you thought you knew or everything that you wanted to do. And I know that in my life, there's been plenty of moments where I have needed that the most, because I don't know about you, but I can be stubborn at times. I can want my way. I can want my things. I can want the certain things that I already have planned for the day to go the way that I want them to. And if I'm not careful, I can only think about me, myself, and I way too often. And in this life, when we're trying to grow through life, we're trying to go through life, and we're wondering, man, what am I supposed to do? Who am I supposed to be? I think it's in moments when plans don't go the way you think that they are supposed to, that your character is really revealed. Who you're supposed to be in those moments reveal exactly the direction that God should be or could be leading you down, and it's up to you whether you're going to take that path or not. And so if you're taking notes, and you should be taking notes because note takers are, the title of my message tonight is An Encounter Changes Everything. An encounter changes everything. We're going to read through a story here. Many of you guys know this story, and it's not going to be on the screen, all of it, where it's referenced. We good over there? Where it's referenced at will be on the screen. But it's a moment that I think will help speak to where I think that God is wanting us to go tonight. And so we're going to be in Acts 9, verses 1 through 19. It's a lot of scripture, so bear with me, all right? I'm going to read through this as best as I can, and then we're going to break it down here in a second. Meanwhile, Saul was uttering threats with every breath and was eager to kill the Lord's followers. So he went to the high priest. He requested letters addressed to the synagogues in Damascus, asking for their cooperation in the arrest of any followers of the way he found there. He wanted to bring them, both men and women, back to Jerusalem in chains. As he was approaching Damascus on this mission, a light from heaven suddenly shone down around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" "Who are you, Lord?" Saul asked. Then the voice replied, "I am Jesus, the one you are persecuting. Now get up and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do." The men with Saul stood speechless, for they heard the sound of someone's voice, but saw no one. Saul picked himself up off the ground, but when he opened his eyes, he was blind. So his companions led him by the hand to Damascus. He remained there blind for 3 days and did not eat or drink. Now there was a believer in Damascus named Ananias. The Lord spoke to him in a vision, calling, "Ananias." "Yes, Lord," he replied. The Lord said, "Go over to Straight Street to the house of Judas. When you get there, ask for a man from Tarsus named Saul. He is praying to me right now, and I have shown him a vision of a man named Ananias coming in and laying hands on him so he can see again." "But Lord," exclaimed Ananias, "I've heard many people talk about the terrible things that this man has done to believers in Jerusalem. And he is authorized by the leading priest to arrest everyone who calls upon your name." But the Lord said, "Go, for Saul is my chosen instrument to take my message to the Gentiles and to kings, as well as to the people of Israel. And I will show him how much he must suffer for my name's sake." So Ananias went and found Saul. He laid his hands on him and said, "Brother Saul, the Lord Jesus, who appeared to you on the road, has sent me so that you might regain your sight and be filled with the Holy Spirit." Instantly, something like scales fell from Saul's eyes, and he recognized his sight, or regained his sight. Then he got up and was baptized. Afterwards, he ate some food and regained his strength. Now listen, there's a ton of things in this story that we can talk about, but I want to go all the way back up to the beginning. Here's this guy named Saul who has been commissioned by the high priest of the time. And if you don't know about what was happening in those moments and in those biblical times, the high priest, the people, the religious leaders of the time, the religious leaders of the moments, they were really the ones who were in charge of the things going on in the cities, in the towns that they were in. They were really the ones who were setting the tone, setting the pace, creating new laws, different things like that. Before Jesus, if you were to follow the religious law, there was laws on laws on laws to keep you from breaking the original law. And it was a mess, and it was crazy. and the priests are the ones who would dictate those laws, okay? Obviously, we just came out of Easter. We know the story. Jesus came to complete the law. He was everything that was ever foretold, but the priests, the rabbis, the Pharisees of the time, they didn't agree with it. They didn't like it. And so they had him crucified. He died. 3 days later, he rose again. And so now, here's Saul going out, and he's on a path. He's on a journey that he thought the rest of his life was going to look a certain way. He thought the rest of his life was going to look like this for as far as he could remember or as far as he could see. Saul literally was killing people for the sake of what he thought was right. He thought he was doing the right thing. He thought that he was doing all the things that he knew that he was supposed to. And so he's heading on to the next city to do again what he thought was right. And then he had an encounter that changed everything. He had an encounter that completely changed the rest of his life. And he would go on to write most of the New Testament. And we can read story after story of Saul, who later would be known as Paul. He then goes out and he changes the world. And I think one of the things that we can look at, and this isn't in my notes, and so it's not going to be up on the screen, but one of the things that I thought was really interesting is that when you have an encounter with Jesus, not everyone is going to necessarily want to believe it. Saul had this moment with other people around him. Jesus appeared to him, but he only appeared to Saul. He didn't appear to the people that were with him. The other people with him could hear what's going on, but they couldn't see what Saul could see. And there are going to be moments in your life where Jesus tells you to do something. He tells you to go somewhere. He tells you to say something. And nobody else is going to know what that is. And are you still going to be faithful and stick to it and still go and do what you were supposed to do? Are you still going to stick with it and be faithful and say, I don't care what anybody else says. Jesus told me to do this, so I'm going to listen and I'm going to go. Why? Because I had an encounter that changed everything. For me, that encounter was a moment when I was 12 years old at youth camp. And God spoke to me very clearly about where my life was heading and what I was supposed to be going to do. And that changed everything for me. And then I got into middle school, high school, decided I was going to do my own thing, decided I was going to do whatever I wanted to do. I thought I was going to be a teacher so that I could end up being a coach. I was just going to teach PE. Everyone knows that teaching PE is super easy. So I was like, I can go and do that. Here, kids, here's a dodgeball. Go throw it at that kid. It'll be fine. Thought that's what I was going to go do. And then my senior year, so in my time in high school, we'd stopped going to youth camp. We didn't go to youth camp for 3 years out of the years that I was in high school because we went to a different conference down in Georgia called Forward Conference, and which was super cool, was super awesome. But my senior year, we went back to the same youth camp that I was at when I was 12 years old. And I was, oddly enough, not realizing it until the moment, standing in pretty much the exact same spot that God spoke to me when I was 12 years old. And he said, hey, Caleb, remember when you were here last time what I told you? That hasn't changed yet. And it was a moment that I had another encounter where Jesus said, hey, here's the plan. Go and do this. And in that moment, I had to make a decision. Was I going to be obedient, or was I going to continue to do my own thing? Saul had to make a decision in this moment. Was he going to be obedient, what he was told to do? Right? He was told to go into town and wait, and Ananias would later come. So he was told to go and do something. Go and wait. But Saul could have been disobedient and said, this doesn't matter, this doesn't change anything. I'm still going to go and do what I want to do. But I think in this moment, Saul learned this, is that you find your identity by being obedient. You find your identity by being obedient. Some of us, I'm going to go back to what I was talking about earlier in worship. Some of us know what we're supposed to do. We know who we're supposed to be. We know the things that we're supposed to be acting on right now. There are things that God has told you to do in your life right now. I'm not talking about down the road. I'm not talking about when you get to adult. There are things that you feel like God has spoken to you right now that you're supposed to be doing in your school, that you're supposed to be speaking about in your school. You're supposed to be reaching out to your family, whatever the case may be. There are things that God has told you right here and right now to do. And part of the reason why you are struggling so much with your identity is because you have been disobedient from that encounter that you had with Jesus. Whatever the case has been, you've been running the opposite direction instead of running to Jesus. Because we're afraid of rejection, we're afraid of this, we're afraid of that, whatever the case may be. But here's what happened. Just like Saul, he had a choice. Saul could have ran and done his own thing, but the problem is that Saul would have remained blind the rest of his life. And while many of us are not walking around physically blind, we are walking around spiritually blind to what is happening around us. All because we have been disobedient in being who God is calling us to be. There are some of you in here that very specific things have been spoken over your life, and you have ran from them because of the pressure of what you feel like it is. But I need to remind you guys tonight that if Jesus put it on you, there's no pressure on you. Because if Jesus put it on you, He's the one carrying it. Avery, if you want to go ahead and come on up. Some of you think that the calling that God has put on your life is pressure to be something, but it's never pressure to be something. It's a gift and a calling to be someone. And that someone is loving, that someone is gracious, that someone is forgiving, that someone is full of joy, that someone is full of mercy. If Jesus puts the weight of a calling on you, you don't have to feel the weight of it, because if Jesus put it on you, He's going to carry it along with you. There are many times that me and Carter will run into the grocery store because we got to grab a couple of things. It's happened the other night. And we're grabbing a couple of things, and I had to go get a gallon of milk. And Carter's at the age right now where he wants to help with everything, which I love. But he also thinks that he's stronger than he actually is as a 6-year-old. And so I'm having him hold a couple of things that I know that he can carry. And I go to grab the milk, and he goes, "Dad, can I carry that?" I go, "Bud, it's kind of heavy. Are you sure you want to do that?" "Yeah, I got it, Dad, I got it." And so I take the other things out of his hands, and because I'm a guy and I don't ever get a cart when I go in like I should. And we just carry everything like this. I say, "Okay, bud, here you go. 2 hands on it, right?" So he grabs the handle, he sticks one underneath it, and he's walking. And for a while, he does okay. For a while there, I'm like, oh, he actually might get to the front with this thing. But we get about halfway, and he goes, "Dad, I can't carry this anymore. It's so heavy. I need you to take it." And that's what a lot of us have done. We've grabbed the thing that God has given to us as a gift, and we've carried the weight of it all on our own, thinking that it's on us to do these things. And what happens is we get about halfway from where we're supposed to be, and we end up dropping it, and we leave it right there, and we say, "This is too heavy. I can't carry it anymore. I'm moving on." And in reality, you were never supposed to be the one carrying it. It was always Jesus carrying it with you. He just wanted to be on the journey. Saul could have very easily said, "Okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to, get healed, and I'm going to do what God's telling me, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to do my own thing again." But when you continue to read on in the life of Saul, again, later becoming Paul, we see that the one encounter literally changed everything for him. It changed everything about his identity, all the way down to his name. He was no longer known as the guy who was killing Christians, but now was known as the guy who was telling everyone about Jesus. You go on to read in the story of Paul, him and a guy named Silas, they're in a jail later in the New Testament. And in the middle of the night, they're praising and they're worshiping. In the middle of jail, they're praising and worshiping God. And when you read it, everything begins to shake around them. The shackles that are on them, they fall off. The prison doors fall down. And the guard that was guarding them, long story short, ends up giving his life to Jesus. They go back. Family gives their life to Jesus. All because Saul turned Paul, decided that one encounter was going to change who I am. I think a lot of times in life, and especially those of you guys that are in high school as you're getting ready to graduate or even getting closer to your senior year, it's all about what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to do with your life? What do you want to do with your life? What do you want to do with your life? Where are you going to go to college? Where are you going to go to college? Where are you going to go to college? And the simple fact of the matter is God doesn't really care what you do with your life. He cares about who you are in every area of your life. Yes, I believe full-heartedly that He can place callings on your life to go and do things, right? Like I full-heartedly, I believe that when I was 12 years old at camp, that God called me into youth ministry. But if I was never to become a youth pastor, but I still serve Jesus, and I still love the people around me the way that I was supposed to, and I still searched after everything that Jesus had for me, and I was still generous with my life, I'm still going to live a blessed life. I'm still going to live a life that chases after the things of God. I want people to know me not as Caleb, but as someone who loves big because I was first loved in a way that nobody else could. Let your identity not be wrapped up in who or what you do, but who God is making you into. I know too many adults that their identity is wrapped up in what they do. I know too many people that are your guys' age that is wrapped up in what they do. What sports they play, what clubs they're in, what grades they get, what friends they have. And in reality, your identity is simply in what you allow Jesus to do in your life.